Welcome to Wealth Professor's Tax Liens Exposed. This is the home study course, module number 3. This is the state-by-state guide to tax lien certificates. This is the module of the state-by-state. The printed material that you have in your course has much more information. It has all of the counties. It's got them broken down with the contact information of the counties. It also, that information goes into tax deeds as well, right? So this here is for you to use to begin to make a determination as to what states that you want to work in, and then you will break down the counties by using the guide that you have that comes with the course. You'll go through that. There's about 800 pages in our state-by-state, county-by-county guide that you received with the Wealth Professor's Tax Liens Exposed course. All right, so let's get right into this, right? And I know that you guys did the homework that I gave you to do on the last module, and I know that you did the homework on the module before that, right? Because this is very, very important. You want to be taking these steps each time, each step of the way, and you want to get out there and do this business, right? So really, it's how much money are you starting with? What are you going to be investing in this? You know, are you starting with $1,000, $2,000, $20,000, $200,000, $2 million, whatever it is? Don't get hung up on it. Just understand this, is that your investment is safe and secure in tax lien certificates. That's what I love about it, right? And then remember, you're putting yourself in the way of that huge windfall when you get that property. You're just going to love it when you go and you apply for the deed to something, to a property that you have the tax lien on, because the taxpayer has not paid the taxes, right? You know, when you talk about compounding of the interest, right? Albert Einstein said that compound interest is the most powerful force on earth. So what you're going to be doing is you're going to be investing your money in the tax liens and then reinvesting the profits into new tax liens. When you do this, right, you understand that you will be achieving staggeringly large results, right? And that's due to the effects of compound interest. Just fantastic. So when you start looking at it, right, and you say, well, I've got $2,000 to invest, a 20-time return on that would give you $40,000. 50-time return on that $2,000 is $100,000. A 100-time return on that $2,000 is $200,000, right? So just understand, when you look at this is talking about the interest rates, right, and how much of a return you're going to get by using this system to buy tax lien certificates, wait out the redemption periods, right, and then re-up and then buy more tax lien certificates with the profits from the last ones. And of course, you'll do that with the properties when you get the properties for 5 and 10 cents on the dollar as well, right? So, you know, when you look at this, you say, wow, a $2,000 investment, a 100-time return on that makes that $2,000, $200,000. Yes, you can do that with tax liens. A $20,000 investment, right? A 20-time return on that $20,000 brings it to $400,000. Yes, you can do that with tax liens. A $20,000 investment, a 50-time return on that $20,000 is $1 million. Yes, you can do that with tax liens. A 100-time return on the $20,000 gives you a $2 million position. Yes, you can do that with tax liens. $200,000 investment. You can do this. You can get a 20-time return, $4 million. Yes, you can do it with tax liens. A 50-time return on that $200,000. That gives you $10 million. Yes, you can do that with tax liens. A 100-time return on your $200,000 is $20 million. Yes, you can do that with tax liens. So let's go into the states, right? Remember, in the last module, we touched on some of the states. These are the states that are offering the tax lien certificates. So you see, that's where they're arranged. Let's go right to it, right? And let's begin with Alabama. Alabama has an interest rate of 12% a year, right, or 1% a month. That's how they do it. The redemption period is 3 years, and then it automatically converts to a deed, right? So this is Alabama. So that's nice. So it's a 3-year redemption period. You get the property after 3 years if you're the person who holds that tax lien. The sales are held in May and June, and the bids begin at the minimum bid amount. And interest is granted up to 15% of the value of the property. So this is really important. So you have that. So the bids begin at the minimum bid amount, and interest is granted up to 15% of the value of the property. Overbid, over 15% of the value is returned on redemption without interest. Alabama. That's Alabama. The next one. Let's go right to it. Arizona. Arizona is a 16% interest environment. That's 1.33% per month. Redemption period is 3 years, and you then have to apply to the court to obtain the deed. Remember, in Alabama, it was automatic. You just get the deed automatically. Here, you've got to apply to the court. That's okay. Whether it happens automatically or you have to apply to the court, that's all right. Okay. The sales are held in Arizona in February. And the bids begin at the maximum interest rate and are bid down to a minimum of 0% interest. So it's a bid down the interest environment, right? And some of the sales are held online. They do that in Maricopa County. And as an example, Maricopa holds their sale completely online, right? So if you're somebody that's somebody that's at home and wherever you live in Florida, you live in Canada, wherever it is that you live, and you want an environment that does the sales online, Arizona is a wonderful environment for that, and it's a 16% environment. Bid down the interest, and again, it doesn't mean that you have to do the auction sale. Doesn't mean that you have to bid down. You can wait for the over-the-counter. We'll talk more about that later, but that's Arizona. These are the stats for Arizona. Let's go to the next state. And the next state is Colorado. Colorado has an interest rate. It's kind of an interesting way that they do it. It's a little convoluted. It's 9%. And then what they add to that is plus whatever the federal discount rate is, right? I mean, at one point the federal discount rate was 6.25%. Then it's 2.25%. Right now, I think it's around 2%. Okay, whatever it is, but that's their rule. The redemption period is 3 years. Then you can apply for a treasurer's deed. In Colorado, you get a treasurer's deed, and the sales are held October and December. The sales are held in October and December. Right? And the bids begin at the amount due, and then they can go into overbid, right? That's the premium, the amount due, and then remember the other word for overbid is premium, and that's only on the liens that are over $3,000. Now, there are 64 counties in Colorado. 6 have online sales, including Denver County. Right, so just you can do online sales in Colorado. So a lot of people they get the course and then they say, well, I couldn't do it. I couldn't figure out what I wanted to do because the state that I wanted, they don't do enough online sales. Stop making excuses and start making money. There are counties in states that are attractive for you to do this, that you can do the online sales. You can do the over-the-counter. You don't even need the computer for the over-the-counter. So, I mean, this is really ours. It is yours for the taking, right? So, now, D.C., Washington, D.C., District of Columbia. This is not a state, right? It's a sovereign nation unto its own. The interest rate is 18% a year, which is 1.5% a month. The redemption period is 6 months, and you can complete a foreclosure in D.C. in less than a year. Right, so it's a very exciting environment to do this, and it happens to be a very desirable place. More and more foreign entities opening up shop in Washington D.C. to lobby the United States for favor. So prices in the D.C. area have gone up very nicely on a steady basis. So at any rate, the sales are held once a year. Sometimes they do it in July. Sometimes they do it in September. That's when they do it. The bids begin at the minimum bid amount, and then they continue into premium or overbid. And then the overbid is returned to you upon redemption, right? But no interest is granted beyond the minimum bid amount, meaning you'll make interest on the minimum bid amount, which is the amount of the tax lien, but you won't make any interest on the overbid or the premium. So if it's a $2,000 tax lien, you'll make your 18% interest on that $2,000. But if it goes into overbid and you pay $3,000 for it, you'll get interest on the $2,000, but not on the $1,000. But you will get the $1,000 back, right? That's in the event that you don't get the actual property. District of Columbia, those are the stats for the DC. Now let's go into the next state, and the next state that we have is Florida. Right now, Florida has an interest rate of 18% a year. That's 1.5% per month. Right? I like Florida. I like the climate. I like the fact that there are a number of online sales in Florida. It's a 2-year redemption period. You can claim the deed after the 2 years. The sales are held in May and June. Florida, there's plenty of over-the-counter in Florida as well. There's a lot of business being done in Florida. It can be very attractive. The bids begin at the maximum interest rate and decrease in 0.25% increments. Right, so as an example, the maximum interest rate, as you see, is 18%. And then the next bid in the bid down would be 17.75. Then the auctioneer would say 17.5. Then he'd say 17.25. Do I hear 17? Then it's 17. Then it's 16.75. Then 16.5. And then 16.25 and 16. And it goes down in that particular fashion. Right? That's how that works. Florida, an excellent place to be buying tax liens. Illinois has the highest interest rate, the straight interest rate in the country, and Illinois has it's a 36% per year interest on real estate and land, and it's 24% on farmland or agrarian land. The redemption period is 2 years, and then you can apply for the deed. You do a deed application. Can you imagine you're getting 36% a year, right? And then you apply for the deed. If you don't get your 36%, what you're going to do is get the property, right? How's that? Either you get all of your money back plus 36% a year, or you get the property for the amount of the taxes owed. I mean, it's just absolutely crazy. I don't know anything better than tax liens. So the sales are mostly held in November. The bids begin at the maximum interest rate and decrease in 0.25% increments, just the way Florida did. Like I said, Illinois is known as having the highest interest rate in the country. So these are all facts, by the way. None of this information is spun. It's not made up. I mean, this is not a hearsay. This is, it's all fact, right? So in Indiana, the interest rate is 25% a year. It's 10% for the first 6 months, and then 15% for the second 6 months. These are just what the rules are. That's what it is. The redemption period is 1 year, and then you can apply for the deed after the year, right? After that year is satisfied. The sales are held in August or October. The bids begin at the amount of the lien, and then they go on to overbid or premium. Remember, premium and overbid. The interest rate on the overbid is 10%. So even on the premium, this is why Indiana is great for this, is that even on that overbid or that premium, you get an interest rate. Remember, we just said in Illinois you don't get that? Well, in Indiana you do, okay? So you get paid on the overbid. So it's a wonderful environment to be buying in as well. Iowa. The interest rate in Iowa is 24% a year. That's a huge interest rate as well. It's 2% a month if you break it down that way. The redemption period is 1 3/4 years, 1.75 years, and then you can apply to the court to obtain the deed. The sales are held in June, and they do a round-robin sale, right? We talked about how the sales are done in one of the earlier modules, and it's based on percentage of ownership. This is the state where they do a percentage of ownership. They do that in Rhode Island as well. I'm not thrilled with percentage of ownership. It can go down, 95%, 90%, 85%. It can go lower than that. I'm not big on the percentage of ownership. I'm big on 24% a year, but I'm not big on percentage of ownership. So Iowa is one of those, it's kind of like iffy for me. Again, I like the interest rate, but I don't like the percentage of ownership environment. So let's go to the next one. And see, here's the thing, is that I'm going to stay on Iowa for a minute before I go. People say it's one of the best states for tax liens. It is because of the 24%. But I do not like that percentage of ownership. And I don't know how many times I just said it, but I probably just said it 10 times because I really don't like it. And I don't like for my students to get caught with a percentage of ownership environment. I like everything to be straight. Okay? So let's go on to Kentucky. Kentucky has an interest rate of 12% a year, which is 1% a month. The redemption period is 1 year. And after that year, then you can, as the investor, apply for the deed. Now, what's interesting about Kentucky is that each county, it's like each county is its own sovereign nation. It's the sales are held at different times in each county, and the bids begin at the maximum interest rate and decrease in 0.25% increments. Remember, okay, it starts at the maximum, and it's a bid down the interest environment in Kentucky. All right, so but Kentucky is a great place to buy as well. Maryland, the interest rate goes from 6% to 24% per year, depending on the county or the municipality. So it's one of those places where you have to call and check each time just to make sure, because most of the states, this interest rate is figured for the whole state. But in Maryland, it changes from county to county, from municipality to municipality. The redemption period is anywhere from 6 months to 2 years, and each county handles the sales differently. Right? It's still okay. Don't get spooked by it. I mean, it's one of those things. But in Maryland also, there's a large amount of institutional buyers buying in Maryland as well. And so Maryland can be a good state for tax sales. The interest rate can be as high as 24%, and the redemption period can be as short as 6 months. But all sales rules are set separately by the county and can be complicated. And this is one of the things. As I said, Maryland is one of the places where those institutional buyers like to hang out. They hang out in Maryland. They hang out in New Jersey. There's quite a number of them. And there's quite a number of those institutional buyers in New York as well. But don't be afraid of them. I'm just telling you the way it is. But Maryland can be a very good environment for tax liens. Let's go on to the next one, which is Mississippi. Mississippi has an interest rate of 18% a year, which is 1.5% a month. Redemption period is 2 years, and after those 2 years, you as the investor can then apply for the deed. Right? The sales are held in August, and the bids begin at the minimum bid amount and continue then into overbid, right? Overbid or into premium. The overbid is not, this is the problem, okay, with Mississippi, if you get into the overbid situation. Some places you can do the overbid, like Indiana, you get it all back, plus you get interest on the overbid, right? Okay, if it's redeemed. But in Mississippi, the overbid is not returned upon redemption, and no interest is granted beyond the minimum bid amount. So in Mississippi, you wouldn't go into an overbid situation, right, or a premium bid situation unless you were darn sure that you were going to get that property, right? So that's one of the caveats of Mississippi, and that's why we go through the course the way we do, right? So we tell you the good things, and then we tell you the not so good things, so that you can figure out which state makes sense for you. Right? For me, this just means that you can buy in Mississippi, but you can't go into an overbid situation unless you're willing to lose the amount of money that you put in on the overbid. I am not. I never am in a situation or in a position where I feel like losing money on an overbid. I simply don't do it, right? But everybody, it's to each his own, and that's why I choose to invest in places where if there's an overbid involved, if I'm going to invest and there's going to be an overbid, I want to make darn sure that I get that money back. Plus, I get interest on it, right? That's the thing, and Indiana does that. Montana has an interest rate of 10% a year. The redemption period is 2 to 3 years, and then you can apply for the deed. The sales are held in July, and the bids begin at the maximum interest rate and decrease in 0.25% increments. And Montana is one of those places that there's not a whole lot of public information, around about Montana tax lien sales. But in our 800-page state by state, county by county books where we've got all the information on the counties. You can call all the counties in Montana and you can ask them. And I can tell you this from experience, okay, because I've called the counties to see who will talk to you. There's no problem speaking to the folks in Montana. They speak to you and they'll tell you, what publications you can get the information in. Because when it says that very little public information about the Montana tax lien sales is available, that's true. But there's private information, meaning they send some of that information to some of the local papers in various counties, and the people at Montana in those offices will tell you the telephone numbers for the people who have those local publications, and they will send them to you. I've done it to see how accessible it is, and I've gotten that information, and it hasn't cost me anything, right? So I just want you guys to know that, all right? So now let's go to Missouri. Interest rate at 10% a year. The redemption period is 1 year, and you automatically get the deed. So and this is what I love about Missouri, Missouri is the show me state, so it's show me the money, it's show me the deed, right? So the interest rate is 10% a year. If that taxpayer doesn't pay the taxes, you as the investor wind up getting that deed automatically. You don't have to do anything. The good folks at the county in Missouri do it for you. The sales are held in August. The bids begin on the taxes and the penalty owed. Then the bids go up according to the amount that the bidders are willing to pay for the property itself. If the owner never redeems, this is great. Listen to this. You get the property for your bid amount, right? But no interest on the overbid. So there's another one, right? So, but here's the good, here's not so good. No interest on the overbid, but you do get the overbid back. You do get the overbid returned to you, right? But listen to this, 10%, and this is what I like, automatic deed. That means there's no application. It just happens automatically, and then you go from buying a particular tax lien certificate. You buy the certificate, and automatically, if the taxpayer doesn't pay the taxes to the county, if they don't redeem, you automatically get the deed. That's fantastic. Okay, so it's really a very simple process in Missouri. Nebraska has an interest rate of 14% a year. The redemption period is 3 years, and then after that 3-year period is up, then you can apply for the deed. The sales are held in March. That's when they're held. Every year the sales are held in March. And the bids begin at the maximum interest rate, and it's a bid down the interest environment, right? And it decreases in 0.25% increments, remember? So in this particular case, it'll start at 14. Then the auctioneer will say 13.75. Do I hear 13.5? It'll keep going down. And as the hands stay up, so it'll start at 14. Who wants 14%? All the hands will be up because everybody wants 14%. Then 13.75, right? The hands are still up. Then 13.5, right? Then 13.25. Then 13. Then once it starts getting into 9s and 7s and 6s, more and more hands go down, right? That's the auction process. That's a bid down the interest process. So the bidders do not have to attend the auction. They may send their bids in by mail prior to the sale in Nebraska. So what's great about that is that they open them up, they do it in the mail. This is one of the states where if you happen to be a shut-in, okay, and you don't have access to computers, that you can do this through mail and through fax in Nebraska. It's just another opportunity, another way to work in another state. That's Nebraska. Nevada. All right. The interest rate is 12% a year in Nevada. The redemption period is 2 years, and at the end of the 2 year redemption period, at that point, and only at that point, then you can request the deed. The sales are held at different times of the year, depending on the county. It's one of those. The counties call the shots on that. The state rules allow that, and the bids begin at the maximum interest rate, and then they decrease in quarter% increments, just like many of those other states that we talked about. And that when it says the tax lien sales are held sporadically, it's just at different times, so it's varied. So sometimes we'll do it in July, sometimes we'll do it in April, sometimes times we'll do it in January. But in Nevada, the bidders, okay, the investors have to be at the sale. That's the difference in Nevada. New Jersey is one of the places where people that are involved in the institutional buying, they've institutions have done quite a bit of buying in New Jersey. The interest rate is 18% a year, and it's 1.5% a month. The redemption period is 2 years, and you can apply for the deed right after that period of time, right at 2 years. So you get 18% a year, and if indeed the taxpayer hasn't paid their taxes after that 2 year redemption period is up, then you can apply for the deed. The sales are held at different times depending on the particular municipality, particular county. The bids begin at the maximum interest rate, and just like in Florida, right, they decrease in quarter% increments, and the subsequent year's taxes are paid at an automatic rate of 18%, right, not by the month. So that's the difference. Subsequent year's taxes are paid at an automatic rate of 18%, not by the month. So that's New Jersey, right? But New Jersey has has an environment that a lot of institutional buyers buy there, right? And it's one of those places where if there's struck offs or something like that, you just have to have be very sure to check the properties, do your due diligence, because you don't want to get stuck with an industrial property that's got some sort of issue in it, and you're doing a phase 1 or a phase 2 or a phase 3, and you find out, okay, in doing this, okay, that you have all kinds of environmental issues. So you would want to do the due diligence first. What I like to do is I focus again on properties that I pretty much know that I'm not going to have those issues, and those are single tenant, freestanding, the standalone properties with a parking lot around it, something that you can put a post office in there, you can put a 7-Eleven in there. Those are the kinds of properties that I like on the commercial basis. I stay away from the industrial properties, and also I like the regular plain vanilla 1 and 2 family homes, where when I'm doing it, that the tax lien amount is very low compared to the value of the property, right? That's what I look for, whether I'm doing it in New Jersey or New York, or if I'm in Texas or Arizona or Florida, right, or Indiana or Illinois, right? So I look for the same things because those property types are things that I'm comfortable with. I'm comfortable with single-family homes anywhere in the country. I'm comfortable with freestanding, single-tenant, triple net lease properties anywhere in the country because I know that I can pick up the phone and speak to the real estate department at Southland Corp, which is 7-Eleven, and I know that if I have the right kind of property, I can rent it to them or I can sell it to them. And if I've got a property that's worth $400,000 that I wound up getting for $40,000 in taxes, and I make a deal and sell it to Southland Corp, and sell it to them cheap for $250,000. I mean, there's nothing wrong with that, right? You're into something for $40,000 and you sell it for $250,000. That's making money, right? So at any rate, there's New Jersey. New York shows an interest rate of 14% a year, and that the redemption period is 1 year. It's a very complicated legal process to obtain the deed in New York, and it's really New York City is where they do the tax liens, and it's all done with a couple of professional companies that collect the taxes and handle this all for the city of New York. It's kind of a locked out deal that the average person is just not a part of it. It's just all institutionally done. And in other parts of the state, okay, other counties, they actually do deed sales where the county forecloses on the properties and then sells the properties themselves, the deeds at the deed sales. So you can get deals at the deed sales, but you do much better when you can buy a tax lien certificate, which is virtually pennies on the dollar, right, in terms of what the property is worth. And then if the person doesn't redeem, that you get the property. So, New York City, unfortunately, and I live in New York City. New York City is one of the places that's, that is more difficult to do the business in, right? So let's go to our next state, which is Oklahoma. Oklahoma, the interest rate is 8% a year. The redemption period is 2 years, right? And you can apply for the deed. The sales are held in October. The bids begin at the maximum interest rate and decrease in 0.25% increments, just like Florida. It's the same thing. And again, this, it will mention that the county by county information about Oklahoma tax lien sales is hard to find. When you get your book, what you want to do is go through, if you're interested in Oklahoma, even though it's only an 8%, can you imagine talking like this? Only 8%. 8% is huge anywhere else. But if you're interested in Oklahoma tax lien sales, go through our state-by-state, county-by-county guide. All of the counties are in there. You can certainly call the folks in the state of Oklahoma, and you can get properties, and you can be getting tax liens there as well. Okay, but 8%, it's not one of the high ones. When you look at Florida at 18%, I like 18%, and it's Florida. I mean, people retire to Florida. I mean, so you have that. So I love that because there's always an influx of people with money coming to Florida, so that when you get one of those properties, okay, and you get a piece of property in Florida that, let's say, it's worth $200,000, and you paid $10,000 for it, because you bought a tax lien. I mean, or you bought it at the tax sale. What you have is something that you're going to be able to sell to somebody for half price very, very quickly, right? I like it because people go there for the climate, and I also like it because of its tourism, right? So, it's got Walt Disney World there, which is I think it's still the largest tourist destination in the world. I think it still is. South Carolina. South Carolina has an interest rate of 12%. Unless they use an alternative method of taxation, they use a couple of things. Then it's 8% penalty for the first year, plus 4% if redeemed during the second year. So it's a little convoluted, right? So that still adds up to 12%, sort of. So I look at at South Carolina as a good place to buy, because you've got plenty of people from New York moving into South Carolina. A lot of people used to go to from New York, and they used to move into Florida. And now then they decide that they would come back to New York. They don't, and they would wind up only going partially back and make it back to the Carolinas from Florida instead of going all the way back to New York. But what you have now in South Carolina is a solid influx of New Yorkers moving to South Carolina, getting out of New York and looking for properties there. So you got plenty of people to sell properties to in South Carolina. The sales are held in October and November, and the bids begin at the maximum interest rate, okay, and they decrease in those 0.25% increments, just like Florida, right? The same thing. The bidders must pay by the end of the day or be fined. Some places, if you don't pay by the end of the day, they fine you and throw you out. They never want you back. Anyway, Vermont, the interest rate is 12% per year. The redemption period is 1 year. And after that 1 year, at that point, at the end of the redemption period, that's when you can apply for the deed. And the sales are held at different times of the year, and it varies by the municipalities in Vermont. The bids there, again, they also begin at the maximum interest rate, and they decrease. It's a bid down the interest environment, and they decrease in 0.25% increments. Right? That's Vermont. West Virginia is interesting. West Virginia is a 12% a year environment. 12%, which is not bad. When you look at some of these things, and you'll make your own decisions. I'm not selling one state or another. I have my favorites. You hear, I have properties in Illinois. I mean, well, what does that tell you, right? That tells you that I'm going after higher interest rates, and I like that. So I like the high interest rates, and I like nabbing properties. I like, going to the physical auctions. I do those things, but you don't have to do that. I mean, there's nothing wrong with getting 12% a year if you decide to do it in West Virginia. Hey, you know what? There's nothing wrong with 18% in Florida. I love Florida as a place to do this business. There's nothing wrong with getting 24% in Iowa, except for that in Iowa you have the bid down the ownership, which I'm not a fan of, right? But in Texas at 25%. So you've got all of these environments that you can do the business in. You have to think of what's the best for me, and at some point, we'll have a discussion about that. I look forward to one-on-one discussions with you folks at some point. And the thing is that well, we can help you, whether it's me or whether it's my coaches, and we can work on these things, and we can come up with a proper plan for you. But West Virginia, 12% a year. The redemption period is 17 months, and then you can apply for the deed, right? So that's a 17-month redemption period. The sales are held in October and November. The bids begin at the amount of the lien, and then they go to premium or overbid. In the event of redemption, meaning if the taxpayer pays, right, that's redemption. If the taxpayer pays the taxes, that means it redeems, right? Non-redemption for us means we get the property. Redemption for us means we get all of our money back plus interest. So in the event of redemption, meaning the taxpayer paid the taxes, we get all of the money we paid for the tax lien back plus interest, right? But the overbid amount, right, is returned to us without interest, which means that if the lien was $1,000, we get the $1,000 back plus the 12% interest. But if we paid $2,000 because it went into overbid, we only get interest on the $1,000 that we paid for the lien, and the second $1,000 that was the overbid. Let's say went into an overbid scenario or premium bid, we get the $1,000 back in West Virginia, but we do not get any interest on it, right? So so that's West Virginia. And again, when you hear these rules, these are the rules of the states. We don't make them up. That's just what the rules are. Wyoming. Wyoming, the interest rate is 18% a year or 1.5% a month, right? That's what Wyoming is. It's a very, very attractive interest rate. The redemption period is 4 years. That's not so attractive, but it's still okay, right? And at the end of 4 years, then you can apply for the deed, right? The sales are held in July, and the sales are held in October in Wyoming. The bids, again, it's a bid down the interest rate environment. The bids begin at the maximum interest rate of 18%, like it is in Florida, right? And then it decreases in 1/4% in 1/4% increments, just like in Florida, the same thing. And Wyoming is a good state for tax liens due to the high interest rate. You've got people like T. Boone Pickens and Ted Turner and all these folks. They have all these heavy-duty entrepreneurs and industrialists that have been they're buying land in Wyoming. There are things people have put, the windmill facilities in there, and there's plenty of opportunity here. And I like the fact that it's 18% a year, and I like the fact that it's bid down 1/4% increments. It's a wonderful state to be doing tax liens in, as well as some of the others, in including Florida and Illinois. Some just really great numbers. And those are the states, all right, that are the tax lien states, and those are the specs on the states. Now, we went state by state on the tax lien states. What we didn't do is read all of the counties, right? There's no way that we can go through 5,000 different counties on it and do that. You have all of that information in the course, okay? And part of the homework then is what you're going to do is you'll pick a state that you like and pick a couple of counties. pick 6 counties in the state that you like. Call them. Ask them questions. Ask them to explain the overbid process. Ask them to explain a bid down the interest rate process. You now know what it is, right? You know that it's 0.25% at a time. You know that if it starts at 18%, then the next bid is going to be 17 and 3/4. Next bid is going to be 17 and a half. Some of the people you speak to, you'll know more than they do at this point already. Some of the people you speak to, will have a wealth of information to share with you. But just call the person at the county. Call that person. Ask for the treasurer's office. You'll see the information in the book. Just call there, right, and ask them. Say, how do I buy over the counter? Do you have an over the counter list that I can see? Do you have any information online that I can access? All that information. I mean, just ask them. So if your state, and these are some of the closing observations here, if your state doesn't offer you the best return, right, you can buy in a nearby state, okay, or if you quote unquote want to call it a better state, buy someplace else. You can look for the online sales, right, and just understand that you can buy across the country then without needing to get on a plane and do those other things. If you're more interested in a non-redemption strategy, right, that means that you want to acquire the property. People that are into property acquisition and tax liens, they're working a non-redemption strategy. If that's the case, you're going to want to use the information a little differently than if you only wanted the high interest rate. Right? We're going to discuss that more in class number 4. All right, guys. Having said that, this is George Fuchs signing out. Take good care. And get yourself wealthy. We'll talk soon.